Did you know there's a direct relationship between Minions and The Simpsons? And we're not just talking about the color yellow. Or, did you know that despite Gru looking older, he and Vector are the same age? It becomes evident when we see Mr. Perkins in Minions 2, The Rise of Gru, holding the same photo he has in his office in the first film, with Vector on his shoulders. And we can see that he and Gru apparently are of the same age. Technically, this makes them contemporaries with very close ages, despite not looking like it. It's true what they say, baldness ages men a bit, right, Gru? That's just the first amazing curiosity we found in the Minions movies and Gru's movies to tell you. And believe me, some of them will really surprise you. Did you know that at least for now, according to the 5 Illumination movies where the Minions appear, they've had 10 different bosses? We all know Minions' vocation is to find the most evil beings and become their minions. After all, that seems to be their purpose in life. They started serving, and accidentally killing, a Tyrannosaurus. Then they served a caveman, an Egyptian pharaoh, a medieval noble who slipped and met a tragic end, to a vampire who apparently is Dracula, but they accidentally toasted him with sunlight. After that, they served French Emperor Napoleon when they ended up in the icy lands, probably Siberia. There, for a short period, they served the snowmen. The next boss was Scarlet Overkill. And finally came the mini-boss, Gru, with whom they've been since the early 1970s. And if we consider the last scene of Despicable Me 3, we can even say Drew is a boss, as most of the yellow minions left with him to practice villainy.
Hey, guys, come on!
Considering that Gru was already a relatively large child when man landed on the moon, we can already calculate to get an idea of our favorite villain's age. And to know exactly Gru's age is very simple. Just pay attention to the director's computer screen at the orphanage. When Gru's profile appears on the screen, we can see his date of birth, September 28, 1960. As the first moon landing supposedly was in 1969, meaning Gru was between 8 and 9 years old when that happened. Which means that in the 2020s onwards, Gru is over 50 years old. In fact, he's already in his 60s. Let's agree he's a well-preserved old man, right? Remembering that Vector is also practically the same age, so they can't tease each other. Now, let's talk a bit about anatomy. Hardly anyone notices this, but if you stop to observe, minions are completely different beings. Despite having a humanoid appearance, with heads, arms, and legs, if you look closely, you'll notice they only have 3 fingers on their hands. Moreover, we can say there's a great possibility that minions are almost immortal beings, as they don't age over time and have been on the planet since ancient times, appearing in the prehistoric era and remaining in the world until today, which means they existed before humanity itself. Not to mention they can even survive in outer space where there's no oxygen. There's a theory that minions are from another planet. Could it be true? And this leads us to the origin of the Minions, which so far remains a great mystery that will surely be revealed at some point in the future. But the fact is that this origin changed at some point, since originally the idea was that Gru and Dr. Nefario had created the Minions through bizarre scientific experiments. Proof of this is the prototypes of robots on the shelf in the girls' room in the first film. In fact, there's even a board showing all the anatomical details of the Minion project, indicating that they would indeed have been created in a laboratory. The idea of using creation experiments for Gru's minions was shelved and replaced by the version we saw in the movie, with the little yellow creatures. And if you're also a fan of the Minions, subscribe here to the channel so you don't miss our next videos about incredible films and animations. Since we touched on this subject, the truth is that originally the idea was to justify that the Minions would be the result of an experiment conducted by Dr. Nefario with popcorn kernels, hence their large quantity and yellow colors as if they were really little corns. But after the success of the first movie in 2010, the idea was abandoned, and we see the Minions emerging many centuries earlier. Since we talked about the origin of the Minions' design, which was also popcorn kernels, now let's talk about Gru's design. Our villain, who later became a hero, had his features inspired by one of the animals that lives in one of the coldest places on Earth, the Emperor Penguin. The gray colors of his clothes and his pointed nose, that closely resembles a penguin's beak, do justice to the design. Moreover, the Emperor Penguin is a species where it's the male that hatches the egg laid by the female and feeds the chicks for a good part of their lives, which is a reflection of Daddy Gru, who takes care of his daughters very well. But it wasn't just the Emperor Penguin that inspired Gru's design. He also has features created from Uncle Fester from the Addams Family, the uncle of Wednesday from the series most of us loved with Jenna Ortega, And we can really see the baldness and the dark-toned clothes are quite similar, making them practically distant cousins. Don't you agree? But what almost nobody knows is that Gru originally had several different versions, with his appearance ranging from a sort of modern Genghis Khan to a somewhat space villain. The earlier versions of Gru were somewhat inspired by spy movies from the 60s and 70s, with classic airs of evil and villainy. But eventually, it was chosen that he would have a more modern appearance, with a striped scarf being the final touch of modernity on Gru. To tell the truth, even the minions themselves would be completely different. In fact, they wouldn't be minions, but human helpers, or half-humans, that Gru would have. More in the style of evil henchmen, as we're used to seeing in superhero cartoons, where villains stay in their lairs and send their henchmen to do the dirty work. You know how it is. But the creators thought that funny, small, yellow creatures would create more empathy with the audience. And they couldn't have been more right. The minions were so successful that besides their solo movie, they're now the official mascots of Illumination, kind of like what Mickey is to Disney. Still talking about henchmen, the problem is that these servants of Gru in their original version would always fare very badly, as initially the idea was that the Despicable Me movie would be full of superheroes. Yes, we're talking about those classic heroes with very tight costumes and a symbol on their chest. And they would be Gru's arch enemies in the movie and responsible for occasionally beating up his henchmen. But the idea was scrapped, and Gru was humanized more, with the character who comes closest to a superhero in the movie being Lucy, with her incredible fighting skills. And speaking of this cool character, if you also enjoy the appearances of the super agent from the Anti-Villain League, comment down below, #Lucy. The relationship between Gru and Dr. Nefario is kind of strange and complex. In Despicable Me 1, we can see that both Gru and his mother are observing a presentation of a freezing gun by young Dr. Nefario at a stand within the villain event. Already in Despicable Me 2, we can see he works undercover at the record store where Gru goes to conduct an interview with the Vicious Six, and they seem to have never seen each other before. And now, in the present, Dr. Nefario is Gru's right-hand man in various moments, being the mind behind many of his inventions. Since we mentioned Dr. Nefario, did you know that according to the show's creators, he's the oldest character of all, being around 150 years old? That's right, he's more than twice Gru's age. How is that possible? Honestly, I have no idea. At least, not yet. Returning to talk about the minions, here's a very interesting curiosity. The minions currently have a population of 899 specimens, which is a very suggestive number. The question is there a minion number 900? The answer is probably yes. And furthermore, she must be the only biological female of the species. I don't know about you, but I'd love to see a Minions movie traveling the world in search of this lost minion. That would be amazing! Did you know that the names of the 3 main minions were named in homage to the writers who have worked on the Simpsons series for several years? For example, Stuart has this name thanks to Stuart Burns. Kevin was named in homage to Kevin Curran, and Bob had his name chosen thanks to Bob Benditson. And the 3 of them are behind several episodes of the Springfield Family. Despite the minions simply loving bananas, we can see that they eat many other things throughout the movie, such as the horrible-tasting jelly they produce themselves. Or sandwiches, like when we see a group of minions having lunch at what seems to be their lunchtime. The park where Gru takes the girls after stealing Vector's shrink ray actually exists in the real world. It was totally inspired by Pacific Park, located in Santa Monica, California, indicating that Gru and the girls probably live somewhere in California too. Those were the 18 amazing curiosities we gathered today to tell you that you probably had no idea about the Minions and Despicable Me movies. It was a lot of fun creating this video, and we hope it was fun for you to watch. And since we know that fun is never too much, we've selected 2 more amazing videos for you to keep enjoying. Just choose your favorite and click. Thanks, and see you soon.